Hard work, dedication, and effort might sound like the three magical ingredients that can make anything work in the world of business. But there is something that tops it all: strategy. When you have the right strategy, nothing can stop you from succeeding. And if you have it wrong, you might just lose it all. A living example of this is the ironic and conflicting fate of brothers Mukesh and Anil Ambani. You're watching Life Story Inc. And this is the story of Mukesh versus Anil Ambani. Before we deep dive into the rise of Mukesh Ambani and the subsequent fall of brother Anil Ambani, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more infotainment. Ring the bell icon to be notified every time we post a new video. After their father's demise, both the brothers inherited assets to start their own empire. But decades later, Mukesh Ambani is touted as one of the richest businessmen in the world, while Anil Ambani succumbed to bankruptcy. But how and why did it happen? It's not an easy black and white story. The Ambani brothers had very different plans, but both of them wanted to follow their father's footsteps and continue his legacy. And that's where it all began, with their father, Dhirubhai Ambani. Dhirubhai Ambani's empire. Dhirubhai Ambani's billion-dollar empire started from a mere food stall. Born in a small village in Gujarat, India, Ambani Sr. was more interested in making money than pursuing a degree. He would often cut classes, much to his mother's dismay. His first venture was rather small, selling fried snacks over weekends. After finishing his studies in Yemen, he joined a transcontinental trading firm as a gas attendant and office clerk. He wanted more than a basic job, so he saved whatever he could and returned home to start his first real business in India, a polyester yarn import and export company which later bloomed into the Reliance Commercial Corporation. The first IPO from Reliance gained as much as 50,000 investors. Back then, only large-scale industrialists were dominating India's business landscape. Ambani Sr. changed the entire scenario with his stronghold. Even today, he is deemed as one of the best businessmen India has ever seen. Once his business started booming, his son Mukesh and Anil also joined him. Mukesh was pursuing an MBA degree at Stanford University when Ambani Sr. pulled him out of college to help in the business. He led Reliance's backward integration in the 1980s and reported to the executive director of the company. The company was still in its early stages, and every person had to contribute equally. Though Mukesh didn't have enough experience in business, he was still treated as a business partner and was given the freedom to explore new ideas and plans. Mukesh had heavily contributed to the success of the business in terms of strategies and tactics. Anil Ambani later joined the business in 1983 after completing his MBA from Wharton. By then, Mukesh already had an edge over him with respect to handling the business. Things took a turn when the executive director of the company passed away in 1985. A year later, Dhirubhai suffered a stroke and all the responsibility shifted on Mukesh and Anil's shoulders. The stroke left Dhirubhai's right hand paralyzed and he was in a coma for more than a week. From the yarn and petrochemical industries, the brothers slowly ventured into information and communication technology with Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Communications Limited. The expansion might have been good for the business, but the rift and the disparities that were building up between the brothers was headed towards taking a greater form in the coming decades. Asset distribution. After Dhirubhai's death, the business expansion continued well into the 90s and both the brothers were doing exceptionally well. Reliance became a force to be reckoned with, but Mukesh and Anil's differences kept growing. In 2002, Dhirubhai Ambani suffered another major stroke. He passed away 2 weeks later, on 6 July 2002. After his demise, the power struggle between the two brothers became apparent. Under Dhirubhai's guidance, both of them were given equal powers and were handling projects of equal importance. But after their father's death, the question of ownership arose. The company that had started with import and export of polyester yarn had now become a Goliath in the Indian business horizon, and who was going to lead it now? The conflict between Mukesh and Anil was no longer an internal matter. Media had its eyes glued on them. Whoever would take charge of the company was going to change Reliance's future, and both Mukesh and Anil were competent for the title. There were many speculations in the media about the ownership feud between the two. Some theorized that Anil's foray into politics was the reason, while others took the tabloid route and attributed the discord to the two wives not getting along. Despite all the noise in the media, the biggest reason for the clash was their difference of interest and contrasting business strategies. Reliance Infocom was a major project for Mukesh Ambani. He knew the potential it had during a time when India was facing a telecom boom. The Infocom's ambitious goals were supported by the holding company's soft loans that went up to $100 million. Anil was not entirely happy with these decisions. He felt that Infocom was a lost cause. He doubted that the company would get anything in return. Mukesh, on the other hand, didn't approve of Anil's ties with the government to create a billion-dollar power plant. The project depended on the holding company again for financial support. Allegedly, Mukesh was very skeptical of the plan and had even said that Reliance didn't have enough gas reserves to feed the planet. The much-publicized feud lasted for over 18 months. Finally, their mother, Kokila-ben Ambani, had to step in to resolve the conflict. She sought the help of close family friend KV Kamath, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of ICICI. With his help, a deal was chalked at to split the $13 billion empire equally between Mukesh and Anil. The brothers were going to set out on their own paths and make a name for themselves. The brands and entities that were to be split were already established names in the Indian market, but how they grew those businesses determined Mukesh and Anil's business prowess. This set the stage for Mukesh's rise to the top. Mukesh Ambani was given the helm of Reliance Industries and the petrochemicals department of the business, while Anil got Reliance Infocom, Reliance Energy, and Reliance Capital. Both brothers accepted the deal, even though Mukesh had to give up on Reliance Infocom, a venture close to his heart. Shortly after the split, Anil Ambani quit Reliance Industries Limited and started his own holding company called Anil Ambani Enterprises. The rise of Mukesh Ambani. After getting the ownership of Reliance Industries Limited and Indian Petrochemicals Corporation Limited, Mukesh even surpassed his father's fortune with one business masterstroke after another. He even helmed the inception of the world's largest grassroots petroleum refinery at Jamnagar in India. His businesses were growing, but his dream to revolutionize India's telecom industry was what earned him the title of the richest man in Asia. In the split, Reliance's cash cow, Reliance Infocom, had gone to Anil, and according to the deal, the brothers weren't allowed to enter each other's domain for a decade. As soon as the decade ended, Mukesh jumped into the telecom industry with his newest venture, Jio. When Reliance Infocom was launched, the competition in the market was fairly less since telecom was just rising as an industry. But with Jio, the market was cutthroat and Mukesh's entry ruffled many feathers. He introduced Jio Telecom and broadband services at dirt cheap prices and killed the competition instantly. In fact, when Jio was launched, consumers were given 1 full year of free internet services. His decision cemented his position as the top businessman of India. But more than that, it transformed internet usage in India. The internet suddenly became an easily available commodity even in rural areas. Mukesh burned trillions with the launch. It was a huge risk, but a very strategic one, which helped him create a similar stronghold over the stock market like his late father, Dhirubhai Ambani. That was not the only space which helped him climb the ladder of countrywide domination. Reliance Retail was another venture which had become a household name. One of the biggest retailers in India in terms of revenue, the brand is present online and physically. Reliance Retail dabbles in groceries, electronics, mobile phones, clothing and footwear, medicines, and even furniture. The venture has acquired many of its well-known competitors in the recent future. It is a Goliath you don't want to go against. With his aggressive yet tactful risk-taking nature, Mukesh Ambani now has a net worth of over $90 billion and is the 11th richest person in the world. The fall of Anil Ambani. Anil Ambani, on the other hand, had a very different fate. While his brother was enjoying his position at the top, Anil was filing for bankruptcy. But what led to his zero net worth? After the split, Anil Ambani ventured into the world of entertainment with an acquisition of a majority stake in AdLabs Films. The company was renamed as Reliance Media Works and contributed to the production of several Steven Spielberg projects, including Lincoln.U. His business was also performing well and lent him the title of the sixth richest person of the world by Forbes magazine back in 2008. So, how did it all go south? Much like Mukesh Ambani, Anil Ambani too had an aggressive expansion plan. He made alliances and deals with various other businesses. It was all working well until it wasn't. During the split of assets after Dhirubhai's demise, Anil was given Reliance Infocom, the cash cow of Reliance Industries, to balance out the assets. It was the crown jewel in his portfolio, but Anil couldn't keep up with the fast-moving industry. The only saving grace of Reliance Telecom was its name. The price wars became cutthroat and the expansive growth was a lot to handle for the company. The strength and popularity soon overshadowed whatever Reliance had to offer. He took many loans to keep the company afloat, and years later, those same loans came to bite back. Reliance Infocom was already in a major debt when Mukesh entered the telecom industry with Jio. As soon as Jio entered the market, it was game over not just for Reliance Infocom, but even other network providers. With no savings in sight, Reliance Infocom filed for bankruptcy. In 2019, he was held in a criminal contempt by Mumbai High Court for non-payment of loans to Swedish company Ericsson. The court gave him 1 month to come up with the $80 million payment. It was his brother Mukesh Ambani who swooped in and saved Anil. Despite the differences in the past, things seemed to get amicable between the two. The Ericsson debt was only the tip of the iceberg. A bigger storm was coming for Anil as he found himself in unsurmountable debt. Anil had blindly ventured into newer horizons with no backup plans to fall back upon. Within a span of 6 years, the 6 companies under Anil fell to half of their value. The junior Ambani brother was surrounded with lawsuits and unpaid debts. Loyal investors started backing out from their support, sending the upcoming crisis the company was headed towards. In 2020, he found himself in a legal battle with 3 Chinese banks over non-payment of dues and was asked to set aside $100 million by the court. That was when he told the court that even if he was liquidated, his assets wouldn't be of any value. He claimed that his net worth was zero. Why did Reliance Power fail? The company was relatively new and small as compared to its peers. With no significant assets or cash flow, its growth clashed with 2007-2008 financial crisis and the prices were very aggressive. Why did Reliance Communications fail? Investors started offloading as soon as the star of the lot, RelianceCom, hit bad waters. They assumed a similar fate for all the other companies like Reliance Capital, Reliance Infrastructure, and Reliance Energy and backed out from their support, where Anil had always been the face of the parent company. A representative at a global business and public affairs, Mukesh worked on strategy and planning at the back end, glued to the walls of his office, while one came across as an extrovert taking spontaneous and irrational decisions. The other silently drafted long-term plans to work his profits with minimal risk. While Anil preferred multitasking on multiple projects, Mukesh took it up one at a time with great depth and introspection. With a capitalist mindset, Anil relies on market trends while Mukesh believes in pure business. It was Anil's lack of expertise in telecom and unsustainable expansion goals that led to his downfall. He looked at it as just another business venture. Mukesh was passionate about data and telecom services. Despite being stripped off the already established telecom company during the split, he planned his strategy well during the 10-year no-business encroachment period and came back with a bang with Jio, which even gave bigwigs like Airtel, the then Hutch, Aircel, Docomo, and other service providers a run for their money. That's passion with aggression for you. We conclude the video by quoting a very famous saying: starting a business with a brother either ends the business or the brotherhood. In the case of Ambani's, we were witnesses to both possibilities. Watch the life stories of the incredible entrepreneurs by clicking the link below.